One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is the idea of balancing profitability and productivity. And I know we kind of talked a little bit about that in when we were talking about the acquisitions and things like that. But how does that kind of play itself out, and how do why is that something that you have to consider and think about?
Sure, I'll take that, Jill, if that's okay. Um, it's such a great question because it drives so many of the decisions we have as a company, and it's very easy to overcomplicate that. And I think that that's the fault that a lot of our peers have, is that they overcomplicate it because we're very, very simplistic on our approach. I think if anybody accused me of anything that might be a shortcoming, it's how simplistic I am and problem solving. However, I do feel like a lot of times that the simplest answer is often the best. And when it comes to balancing profitability and productivity, the idea isn't to be the biggest and be unhealthy. You don't want to be a giant and then suffer a heart attack and be a dead giant. You have to your health has to come first, and that's where you have to look at profitability is a measure of health for your company, and productivity gives us the big numbers that we publish, that we talk to you guys about, right? Hey, Solutionz is number 7 or number 5 or number 10 or whatever. That's great, but it's got to be a healthy number 7. It's got to be a healthy number 10. And we manage that. We're constantly looking at that. We look at that. Jill and I look at that on a weekly basis. Jill has an operations report that she runs on a weekly basis that shows the relative health of her region. And Jill carries a third of the number for the company. So it's very important that she's on target. But I would much rather see our offices be healthy and stagnant in a revenue number year over year than to be unhealthy and have grown their revenue at smaller EBITDA numbers. That's just that makes sense. And so we have KPIs that are out there for the offices to hit. And if they hit the KPI, that's great. They pretty much, Jill knows if she's at her KPIs, she can do what she needs to do to run her business. She can hire people. She can bring in new computers. She can make the office a wellness center for people. She can do all of those things, provided those KPIs are being met that measure the health of the organization. That has to be paramount importance to us. If her revenue stays where it is, that's okay. I'm fine with that. We're here to stay in business long term. We have a long-term vision for what we want. We don't manage things quarter to quarter. It's not a make or break month. We manage long term. And I think that that's important, not just to the health of the business, but to the sanity of the employees as well. Jill,
Okay.
if you want to add anything.
I was going to ask you, the types of things that are in the report, and kind of how you kind of know day to day or week to week or month to month, that the health is on track the way it should be.
Sure. I think the first thing, obviously, EBITDA is a major measure of the health of the business. So we're constantly looking at that. We look at measurements like revenue per head count. I think revenue per head count is an important measurement. It's not the end all be all, but Jill also knows she manages to metric there. And if her revenue per head count is lower than the threshold, there's probably a growth situation going where we have to staff up for something that's coming, for an imminent project that's in backlog. If it's high, then if it gets too high, and we've had situations, there's been times when I've gone to Jill because revenue per head count was so high that I said, you got to hire. You have to hire some people. And that's a great position for a CEO to be in, where he can actually say, hey, you need to add people. You don't need to lose people. You need to add people. So those are days that I look forward to. But there is a measurement that we look at where it's like, hey, the company's making too much. We need to put it back into the company, put it back into our employees' pockets, or we need to staff up because we're burning our people.
Okay. And Jill, talk to me about, kind of from your perspective, how it plays out, in your region when we're talking about the health and productivity and things like that.
Yeah, they're so helpful, and especially just getting the acquired companies in and up to speed with those metrics. It takes a little bit to flush everything out, and then they get on board immediately because sometimes they're coming from a place that maybe they weren't as profitable or as efficient. And when they learn the ways we do things and how we look at things, and it's really eye-opening, and it really helps everyone. But I think the key to what we do is that constant balance of business and employees. I find that the schedule, as much as it's very tactical, if you have the right people watching your resources, using the right resources, watching the schedule constantly, that's a big, big part of being efficient, productive, and profitable. And I think that's where sometimes integrators get lost in that, and it is a big part of it.